All right, 1 o'clock here and ready to get started. Hello and welcome to the Alpha Anywhere demo and Q&A webcast. I'm Dave McCormick, VP of Products and Services here at Alpha Software, and I'm pleased to present both Sarah Mitchell, our documentation head, as well as Dion McCormick, our lead solutions engineer. Today, Sarah will be starting out with a demo, but they're both here to answer your questions. So if you do have questions, go ahead and type them into the questions box of the GoToWebinar control panel. All right, let's get started. Hello, Sarah, are you there?
Yep.
Excellent. Let me go ahead and make you the presenter. You should see a dialog box in a minute. For a second. Oh, there you are. And I see a welcome.
Welcome. So I know Dave said that I was doing a demo, but I'm actually doing a presentation.
Oh, a present. Yeah, my bad.
So the topic today is localization, building apps to support multiple languages. This isn't something you can demo quickly because the requirements of supporting a language are really, it depends on the language that you're trying to support. And we have a lot of languages in this country, or not just in this country, in this world. The United States has a lot, but around the world, there's just thousands of them. And the differences range from everything from just how the language is written to differences in how you print dates or display currency or even print numbers out. So I want to talk about how you can support multiple languages in the same app that not only just translates the text that you see, but also how you could change layouts to support right to left languages, and touch a little bit on how you would support date and time within your application. So Alpha Anywhere has something called translation tags that you can use to add to mark up your apps, that text that you need to translate into other languages. And in conjunction with those translation tags, we also offer culture codes, some date and time formatting automatically, and we have some other tools you can use, such as responsive layouts and integrated templates to get you give you a jump start on the mobile front. Within Alpha Anywhere, we have two types of translation tags. One is called a language tag, and the other is called a text dictionary tag. Both of these tags can be used in any app to wrap text that you need to translate. They can also be used in reports, in addition to components. And the really important thing to know about these tags is the translation is done on the server by reading the session.protected active language session variable, which can be set manually by you to some known value or derived from reading the device culture code, which is a value we get from the browser or I believe also the device, like if it's a mobile device. Language tags take this format here, this A5:R, the closing A5:R. The translations for a language tag are stored exclusively within a component. So you can keep everything in one place if you've got a single component implementation. If you don't, you might want to look instead at using a text dictionary tag, which is the A5:T tag. Text dictionary tags are actually stored in an external database. So in addition to needing all those translations, you also need a database backend to look those up from. I believe most people who use Alpha Anywhere already have a database of some sort that they can use to store these translations. But they're recommended in the case of having multiple components, as well as in reports, because a report, I don't think a report has a way to store language definitions within it. So using the text dictionary tags is going to be your best bet there. I wanted to show you what that text dictionary looks like. So I'm going to create a new UX here, and in this UX component, if you go into properties and you scroll down, you'll find a section that talks about languages. They're in the other section. So you have language definitions, which are those language tags, and then text dictionary tags. And this is where you can define those mappings. So this component doesn't have anything in it yet, so I'm going to add something. I'm going to add a text box. I'll just call it first name. Okay. And show you that in working preview. So this is my very simple app with a single field. It's not connected to any database backend, but it does have this label, and that label is gonna say different things in different languages. So if I wanted to make that text something that could be translated at runtime when the component is queried from the server, what you can come down here is you can find this label and edit it and add your language tags to it. So I'm gonna go with A5R, which is our language tags first, and then we'll go look at text dictionary next. I'll click OK. So now when I go back to properties, if I look inside this language definitions, I'm going to find default, and there's this button down here. I can say refresh list placeholders. This is going to search through my component for everything that exists. And there's that first name that I added to my component. So here I'm just going to put first name. I'm going to click OK and save it. So what this has done is I've told Alpha Anywhere that when it finds first name, and we're using the default language because there's only one right now, it's going to replace that text with first name. That text inside the language tag can be anything. As long as it has a replacement, it will show what you want. So I could just as easily just had that called label 1 or label 2, and over here put first name, date of birth, whatever text I want to do appear there. So you're not necessarily restricted to having to include the text that you're translating in the tag, but it is helpful when you start to add other languages, such as French or German. And I'm going to apologize now because I am not well versed in other languages. So if I wanted to include a translation here for French, I would need to go out first and figure out how to say that, unless somebody wants to type in the chat window how I would translate this into French.
Why don't we do it in Spanish? Nombre
Nombre.
in Spanish.
Let's do, all right, there's
First
prenom.
name. Prenom, okay.
I'll take that. All right, I'll copy that out of here. I'll put it here. And then Dave suggested Spanish. So let's go ahead and add Spanish here. Click OK. Tell it refresh my list of placeholders. And Dave, how would I spell that?
Nombre, I think.
N-O-M.
Nom, as in Mary.
All right, thank you. All right, so I've got 3 translations here. I've got my default, which is what's gonna show up out of the box. I've got French and I've got Spanish. I'm gonna click OK to save this. And next we'll take a look at the active language. So active language is the active language for the component when it is queried from the server. You can use this property here in alpha to change it to test your component while you're working on it. So we could change this to French. And so this time when we run our component, we should see, I'm gonna save this real quick. Language tag demo, no. So setting this active language to French, which was one of the languages I've defined here, it needs to match what you specify here. Otherwise, it won't know what to do when you give it a language it doesn't have a definition for. So if we go into working preview now, it will have French here. So you see prenom. If we go back here, and we can change it to Spanish. There we go. Working preview. And then that's how it'll appear in Spanish. You can set these things at runtime using server-side events. As I mentioned before, you would need to set this session.protectedActiveLanguage value.
Can I ask you just a quick question there?
Yeah.
and it's actually someone had written in, they said that session dot underscore underscore protected underscore underscore, is that still needed? I know it was used starting back in Alpha 5 version 11. They said, but aren't session variables protected anyway, or do you have to do something special?
The
We
meaning
still
of
use that.
underbar, protected underbar is irrelevant. I know, I think back, and this predates all of my experience with alpha, but
Okay,
I think it was used to say like these session variables are protected and should be hidden or something like that.
right.
And that's the case for all session variables now. So it
So
doesn't mean anything, and
yep.
it's it was session protected active language back then, and it hasn't been changed since. So that's what you have to set at runtime if you want to change it.
Oh, I see.
Forever.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the name of the session variable you have to set. There's no meaning in the underbar
So
protected
there's a
part.
session variable under, but don't worry about it. And if you leave out the protected, it's not going to work. So make sure you put it in.
Right.
Okay.
So actually, let's do this here. And this is active language. This is, I'm going to change this back to language. Okay. Above, excuse me, I'll move that up there. And I'm going to make this a list of choices. There they are. I'm going to call this one default, or maybe English, French, and Spanish. And then when we change it, I think that's stored in e.language. E object. I'm thinking right now. I didn't contains. I think I scrolled right by it.
Yeah, it says the E object contains the data that, or you think language is a specific one.
I want to get the value out of this control.
Mm-hmm.
So
E.language.
is it e.language?
Let's go with it.
We'll see how the debug one. Classic way to figure this out. I'm just gonna do that real quick. I'm gonna save
And
this.
it's times like these that people say, "What would Dion do?" Just try it.
What would Dion do? Just try it. Yeah.
All right.
I'm gonna change it.
Right.
We're gonna look at
All
E,
right.
and we're gonna
Yep.
figure out where that
Let's try
value is. Ah, it's in new.
new.
New language. I want to copy that. All right, that's where it is. I'm gonna go back. Go in here. Change this back to dim language as C. Language equals this. E. No, it's
Data submitted.
session dot protected.
Frozen.
Oh, is it frozen?
My bad. Yeah, but I think it was just me.
Oh, you think it was just you? Did it freeze for anyone else?
Yep.
Let me
Doesn't look
see
like it.
here. Refresh. Save that real quick and then go double check something real quick. I think the name of the method I want to call on the dialog is refresh, but nope. No. Maybe it's not. Maybe you'll say I'm gonna just see if this will work.
Wait, should that be in quotes though? If you're doing it in Xbasic, sorry.
You know, this is the JavaScript to
Gotcha. Thank
execute
you very
that is
much.
returned.
Yep.
And this is a wild guess,
All right.
and I think it will work. But so
Let's
when
take a
you
look.
change the session variable, you have to reload the component.
Mhm.
And I'm a little rusty on trying to remember how to do that, but I do know that if you reload the web browser page, then it should reload the component. And this is a really weird thing that's been going on with me for me today, where my live preview is not working for me. So right now it's in Spanish. I'm gonna change it to French and see what happens. There we go.
Ah,
So it window.location equals window.location is just a really cheesy way to reload the page. But changing that sets the active language to what I want. So, and obviously more work needs to be done here to pre-populate active language with whatever the current active language is in the drop-down choice. But that really quick and dirty is how you would change that at runtime to either maybe you want to configure that through a setting. The other thing though that you can also use is the culture code. And I do want to talk about that briefly before we look at text dictionary tags. Culture codes are these they're universal encodings that describe the language that the browser or operating system is using, and they're pretty standardized. And a while ago, not too long ago, we introduced the ability to say use the culture code to define the active language, as opposed to you having to manually specify French or Spanish or German. So
no, I'm correct, right? That the culture codes are actually that's sort of set maybe automatically, but by the user. But when their browser hits the server, that's when it
mhm,
reveals its culture code. Is that right?
yeah,
Sort
that's
of
when
like
we read it, is when
just
they
like you know the
trigger.
operating system and you know maybe the size of the screen, the
Yeah,
browser also tells you what the culture code is. Cool.
right. So, and then that culture code gets read and it is set into the protected active language at runtime. So we could actually go back here. We can tell the component to automatically set the active language using culture in that active language property. So if I come back here to active language in the UX properties and change this to culture, and then if we go back over here and we add another control, we'll just call it current language, maybe active language. Nah, there we go. And we tell it to set the default value to session dot underbar protected active language, which this is the syntax for setting. I don't know if that makes it bigger. That's the syntax for setting the default value for a control to a session variable. We save this, and then I'm gonna remote test this in a browser. I'm gonna save a page. Save that. And then I'm gonna publish all of this locally. Publish and launch, okie dokie. Oh, there we go. So it's not currently set. That's interesting. That didn't work. I thought it was gonna work. In theory, in theory, that would have read the active language out of the browser, and then set that, set the property to what was in there. That being said, if you do use the culture codes, you want to specify in here a culture code as opposed to the word French. So there's this help link down here you can use that helps you figure out what those culture codes are, and we actually give you a list that you can pick from. These are the most common ones. There are others out there that aren't in this list, and if you go to documentation, we do link to a Wikipedia article, I believe, that talks about culture codes in more detail. Ooh, also, full disclosure, I recently rolled everything over to a new server, so the documentation might have a few little issues here and there we still have to iron out, and that looks like I found one. So this is very useful. But here on this Wikipedia article, it has a list of the language families and the language tags associated with them. And you can look at this and just learn more about how culture codes work. They're really fascinating. I really learned a lot about how we have this weird 2 and 3 letter encoding that has created this giant classification of all the languages of the world for web browsers to identify. So that's really interesting, and it's definitely worth looking into, especially if you're going to be planning on supporting multiple languages. So we took a look at language tags. They're basic. Again, the translation is stored directly in the component. The other one is text dictionary tags. Instead of using A5R, they use A5T, and they require that you have a database hooked up on the back end to store all those things. So you can access those definitions directly through your component properties in the text dictionary tag setting. But if you haven't set up any text dictionary tags in this project and you also haven't configured the text dictionary, then you're not going to gain any access to this dialog. So the first thing you need to do if you're going to use text dictionary tags is to actually go and set up the project properties, which tells your project where to go find that database that stores those definitions. So if you go to the Web Projects Control Panel and you look inside Project Properties, in here you should find a setting for the text dictionary table. Here it is. So this requires 3 things. It requires a connection string, the table name, and a field map. If you haven't created a table already, we will generate one for you. We have these little links down here that help you do that. So I'm gonna tell it it's a SQL table. I'm gonna go and find this AA demo Northwind, which we ship with Alpha Anywhere, so you can totally use this to kind of experiment with this if you don't have a database that you want to work with directly. And then here it says table name. I don't have a table name in here yet, so I'm gonna just type one in here. I'm just gonna call it translations, and then I'm gonna say create the table, and so it'll create one for me. It'll tell me it created it, and then it'll automatically populate the rest of those fields that need to be specified for storing the language. So all that's stored in that table is the language, the data, and the key. The key, I believe, is the text that is within the text dictionary tag, and the data is what is shown when it matches for the selected language. If you want to build this table yourself, go ahead and click on required table data structure, and we'll give you this this text box that you can actually copy this information out and go and add the required fields to your table or your database of choice. Click OK, click OK, and then go back to that UX. And I'm going to save this file, save as. Demo. Save that because we're going to go over into something new. So one thing that we've done, you may have noticed now I've got 3 controls in here. I might want to translate all 3. So it can be cumbersome to come in here and try to find every single setting, but you don't need to do that manually. We actually have an option under this menu. It's called Internationalization Helper Utilities. And what this lets you do is selectively insert translation tags, either text dictionary or language tags, as you need. or the ones that you want. Or you can use this third option here, select all options, and it will just import everything you need for the text dictionary. It doesn't import everything for your language tags. One of the great things about using this is that it includes wrapping the messages, like are you sure you want to do this, and yes, no warning in the UX settings for you, so you don't have to go and find where those are stored. So that's what this stuff down here is doing. It's wrapping the date picker names, it's wrapping the month names, it's wrapping all the form information over in the UX properties. And it's also inserting info for right here at the top. You can see here is page fields 1 and 3, active language, current language. It's adding that for these, the drop down and that text box ahead at the bottom. You will notice though that first name isn't listed here, and that's because it already has language tags on it. This is only going to insert the code for anything that doesn't have it yet. So I'm going to go ahead and execute this to add all of those text dictionary tags to everything else that I wanted, and then go and update first names label to use the text dictionary instead of the language tag. And all that is A5T, A5T. Click OK. And so that is, I have now wrapped all my labels with text dictionary. So now if I go to those properties, go to text dictionary tags and look at the text dictionary, it will list everything on here that I don't have a translation for. This dialog is laid out with 3 columns. On the left is what you have, in the middle is the language, and on the right is the data. So the first thing you're going to need to do is to actually just create a default text dictionary entry for all tags. And it's going to ask you what language you want to use. So I'm going to type English in here, and that will just populate all of these tags with their English variants. And you can choose one at a time. I'm just going to select everything here. Oh, sorry. This is telling me what it's going to make. I thought I had to pick something. Rereading it. These are the default fields it's going to make. I'm going to click OK. And that's going to insert all of those entries into my database for these tags. So now these all have a green dot, and they have a little box right next to them. It says English. When I click on that, it shows me the languages that are available for this particular text entry. And if I click on it, it shows me what value will be set in that language tag when the English language is chosen. If you want to edit this, you can just click the edit entry option here and enter whatever you want here as the text. And you need to do that for every language. So if I want to create a new entry for all tags, I believe, yeah. So if you want to create a new one for a language, you click the second option and then type in your language of choice. And click OK. And that will add everything for the Spanish language. So now you'll see here when we visit, there are 2 options, English and Spanish. So we'll go down to first name and we go to Spanish. We can edit this entry to say nombre. Okay. And then we'll do this one more time for everything. I'll call it French. I'm not going to translate everything else. That would take a lot of time. But I'm just going to click on this again to refresh it, select that, click edit entry, and go back to Google and copy that French text again, back to Alpha Anywhere, paste it in here, and click OK, and close. So now languages are stored in a text dictionary instead of within this component. I can go and in another component, go in here and look at that text dictionary here in this UX. And hold on a sec. Let me quickly insert a bunch of text dictionary tags. And execute. Close the internationalization helper. Go back to properties. So now I can see here, everything that's green is something that I've used in this component, and everything that's red is something I haven't used. But the translations are all available here for that text. So if I had had something already implemented for English, Spanish, and French, like today is already covered. So all I would have to do now is to go through these other options and just add entries for those languages that I want to support. And as I mentioned before, you can also use them in reports. I'm not going to dig too much into reports because I am at 30 minutes in already, and I know that Dion wants to spend at least 5 minutes of today's webinar showing you guys something else. So
Well,
that's dictionary tags.
more
Yeah,
importantly, we want to make sure if people have questions on this, they get those answers. Let's do that first.
for
That's
sure.
priority. My stuff can wait
Yeah.
if needed.
So that's text dictionary tags, language tags. I just showed you how you do the translation. You have to wrap all your text in the type of tag you want to use. If you just have one component that you want to translate and you're not going to have any others, you're not going to have any reports, language tags are totally fine. Very excellent way to do this. Otherwise, definitely look at that text dictionary table. One of those nice things about the text dictionary table is you can actually then take that database table and export it to Excel or something like that. Hand it off to a translator somewhere. They send it back to you. You re-import all that data back into your text dictionary and you're ready to go. We also looked at the internationalization helper utilities. This generates Xbasic to insert language tags. Another tool that you can use to quickly um, change, wrap text in your component with language tags is the copy paste tool or paste current property. If you select a control and then the property that you want to change, and then you click on paste properties here, this opens up the select multiple properties dialog where you can select a bunch of controls and then set the value of that control to the value that's in the selected control. Interestingly, if you come up here and you check this box, compute the property value using Xbasic code, you can instead use Xbasic. And what this allows you to do is do something like add language tags, but keep the original value. Whereas pasting the same property and everything is going to paste the same property and everything. Everything will say first name, which is not what you want. You want everything to be wrapped. And so you check this box here, you click on define an Xbasic function. We do have a sample function you can use that is already written to insert language tags. This one uses the A5R tags. You can just replace the R with a T if you wanted to use text dictionary. But what this script does is it reads the current value, which is passed into the function here as this first property. That current value is what you see down here in this box. It checks to see if it has a language tag on it. If it doesn't, then it specifies the new value as the current value wrapped inside those language tags. Otherwise, it just says the new value is the current value, as in don't change anything. And then as you scroll down this script, there is an optional prompt here that you can disable by deleting it or commenting out everything you don't like. If you want to keep it around, you can just comment it out. But what it does is it throws up a message box to say, are you sure you want to set the value for this property, for this control, to the following value? Which is nice because then you can pick and choose. Maybe you don't want to wrap something like a label that maybe just has an image as the label as opposed to actual text. So that is that message is worth looking at. It uses the new value, but it also shows you how you can reference other properties in the control using the syntax arri.v. In this case, variable name. Variable name is the name of that control. So in this case, it is the selected one, it'll be first name, but for the other ones, it'll be language and current lang. And then it will show you that notice with that message. And then if you say no, then it resets it. And then finally, it returns the value to set in that control. So we can take this. If you you can use this for other things. Our simple example used language tags. You can use this option down here, save this function in library, to actually save this in something else. I actually came in here earlier today and I saved the code for doing a text dictionary tag, a language tag, and then also just a span tag, which I want to touch on briefly at the very end about how you would support language translations on the client. But saving those scripts then allows you to later load them. Yes, overwrite. and you can click on these to see what you're going to get. So I'm going to cancel out of that. That is another way to quickly go and update everything. The other nice thing about doing that multiple property selection is that if you use a property that maybe you've used bubble help or something that the internationalization utility might not have included, it's very easy to go in and just wrap everything like that quickly using those scripts. And that paste property and multiple controls at once using Xbasic can be used for a variety of things. These language tags don't have to be used for supporting multiple languages. They could be used for doing other stuff like changing the text in your interface or whatever your needs are. But primarily they're used for multiple languages.
Very cool.
Yep.
So question for you. Oh yeah, could you go back to that language dialogue, the genie one, because someone wants to see how they got there.
Oh, the internationalization helper?
So that's one, and then also if you could go back into that thing for recalculating controls one more time, that'd be cool too.
Oh, paste properties?
Yep.
All right, so 2 places. I'll do the internationalization language utilities helper. That's under the menu, and you scroll down and find internationalization helper utilities, and you open that up, and you can look through these different options here to either select individual things, or you can do select all to just grab the code for the text dictionary version. And then when you click execute code, it will execute all the code in here. You could add other code here that you wanted to execute. So that is something to know. And then the other one was you select a control, you select the property that you want to edit, such as the label, and then you click on the picker icon between the triple stack thing next to find. And that opens up this select multiple properties at once. You check the box for computing the property using Xbasic code, and then you click on define Xbasic function to open up that editor to define a transformation function.
Very good. Next question. All right. So English, French, even German, those seem pretty straightforward in terms of doing internationalization. But what about right to left languages? Arabic,
Yeah,
Hebrew,
I think
things
you're
like that?
jumping ahead in my presentation.
Oh, sorry.
I have so many more slides.
Well, this might have to be
So,
going to a second day.
no, well, I'll touch on that briefly here.
All
I
right,
did
fair
want to
enough.
point out that in addition to using the culture code to specify get the culture from the device, which I will look into that a little bit more and figure out how you do that in a web. We have culture date format, culture time format, culture day names, and culture week names to pick that information out from the device as opposed to having you wrap everything and manually having to import it.
Gotcha.
So something to know. Also something to know specifically with numbers and currency. Other countries do format numbers differently. Even if you're just using alpha for your own local language, we have ways to style numbers when they come in, when they're loaded. And that is usually done with, like in the list, you can do a server-side formatting. So I'll open up this list that I made earlier. And I have a field here, and it's called unit price, but I can pick a display format, and using the smart field picker here and choosing the international currency format, you have this dialog where you can pick the country that you want to use, the country that the currency represents, and then as well as some formatting information here. I know somebody might ask, how do you change that dynamically at runtime? I will have to get back to you on that. But also on that date, setting the date names and everything, you can insert those culture codes here. And it's easy to miss, but down here in the help box, it will tell you which one to use. So this one, you could replace all of this and just say culture day names, and then that tells Alpha that you just want to use the day names local to the system and not the ones that were specified here. And that applies to month names as well as the format for the date and the year. And the format is actually picked out of the date format picker. you would, in this drop down, you would pick culture date format if that's what you wanted to use. And for the time format, you would pick culture time format by clicking that link.
Very cool.
And then finally, to address the subject of right to left languages, how do you handle that? There's a lot of ways to handle that. Where we've made it available for you to actually just change the layout internally, such as in panel layouts, you can change the layout flow direction from left to right to left. In terms of flipping all the text entirely in the whole document, you can actually add a single line of JavaScript into your component, and it's this document.body.style.direction equals single quote RTL close quote, and that will reverse the layout of your component. And in terms of handling this stuff dynamically at runtime, you can use responsive layouts in the UX. So if you go to properties and you locate the layout settings, responsive layout settings, you can, in addition to handling like a device size here, you could also add rules that are triggered when the current language is one that should be rendered right to left as opposed to left to right. So you can dynamically at runtime change the layout of your panels in the flow direction, as well as swap out layouts on like a list or a control bar and a number of other things. The controls, the list, the control bar, the form view, the view box, they all have support for multiple layouts, which is great in cases where you need a very different layout because the language requires that text and objects flow a different direction. And that is done by simply going to the properties of, say, in the list and going down and saying it has multiple layouts, checking that box, and then defining those layouts on this multiple layouts tab. And then finally, before, I don't think I'm going to get into this last item here because I do want to leave a bit of time for Dion. But if this is something you do a lot, if translating or building apps in multiple languages is something you do a lot, save yourself some time. Set up a blank UX that has the bare minimum of things in it that you need for all of these applications, and then save it as a template. Under this file menu, you can convert any component into a template using the Save as Template option. You give it a name. You can create a description here if you wanted. And then down here, you can specify what type of template is it. Is it local to the current web project? Is it local to the entire workspace that I'm using, or do you want to make it global so that it's always available in any project that you create? This can save you a lot of time, especially since going through and doing stuff like wrapping error messages and that kind of thing inside language tags can be a little time consuming, especially if you overlook something. And I'll click OK, and that will save my template. And so the next time I come into Alpha and I create my new UX, instead of going in with a blank template, I can start with my own local template. And if you come down here, you'll find that global templates. That's the one I've made. You can start with that. You click OK. And this is going to have everything in it that you saved. So that can save you a lot of time. I highly recommend it. You can also save off some types of controls as custom controls, and we can talk about that on a later date if that's something that interests everybody. And then finally, translating offline. We do have a UX template that shows you how to do this. Offline translation, supporting translation offline is entirely on the client, so it requires doing JavaScript to do the translations and everything. But if you look in our sample templates that we ship, we have one called Mobile App Framework Client-Side Language Translation. And if you open that up, it gives you a little description about what this is about. It's about creating a multi-language app that can translate offline without having to connect to the server. Because again, language tags and text dictionary tags are done they're translated on the server. You can't do that client side. You have to pull that down from the server. So this shows you how you would do something more local, and we've included some a basic function that does the translation for you, and then an example of how you would set up a JSON object that contains all the translations. You can generate this JSON from a database, and something that I wanted to show you guys, but we'll have to do this on another day, is how you could possibly leverage the client-side data cache to get that JSON for you. So you don't have to store it here. You could put it in a database and just pull it down with your app when you need it. So, but that's how the translation done here. It's that same approach of wrapping your text in some sort of tag that can be identified and then replaced. But because we use JavaScript, that tag actually ends up being this span that has an ID that includes a unique identifier for whatever that label contains, in this case first name, and then also this class equals underbar language. We use this in this example to make it easy to do a query to just get every single element in the entire component that contains any of these, any text that needs to be translated. So you can just run through it and move on, quickly swap everything out. So I'm sure there are lots of questions, and I'm going to open it up to questions.
Let me see. Someone was wondering, can you use this for speaking tags, like sign language sort of thing, and announcing fields to the deaf? I don't think that's one of the features, unfortunately, of this, though.
I'm not familiar enough with how those technologies work.
Yeah. Someone asks, is there a storage language option? In other words, if you have someone enter it in French, could you tag that they're entering it in French so that you know the language going in? I guess you could write an app like that, but I don't think the international features support that out of the box. You'd have to code it that way.
Like capturing what language are they writing in?
Exactly.
While they're writing?
Yeah, so they set it
I
to
mean, the
French.
odds are high. Odds are really high that the culture code on their system is going to tell you what language they're using, because keywords are very language dependent and layout.
So you could just put that as a field in the table. Yep, that totally makes sense. Yeah. I think that's about it for localization questions. So I guess we're over to you, Dion. Obviously, if you have other questions, send them to guides, GUIDES, at alphasoftware.com.
Yeah,
I'd be happy to get
we'll
over
just
to you.
have to open it up for questions. My little demo is going to take a little, we would run out all the time, and I want to make sure if anybody has some questions, we might be able to handle a few there.
All right.
So ask now or forever hold your peace.
One other general question, actually, maybe this one could go to Sarah, because it has to do with the Xbasic guide, which just came out recently.
Which is awesome.
But someone was having an issue, and that issue was when they are in, let me see if I can find that one. They went through the Xbasic guide. When I right-click in the interactive code editor window and select genies, I only see 3 Xbasic genies. I don't see the SQL genie reference in the guide. Any idea what could be going on there?
It could have something to do with whatever the version of Alpha Anywhere they're using.
Could be version, sure, yeah.
Genie, I have a whole bunch of genies. So I have it here. This is the current pre-release.
Auth genie.
I mean, if we go to interactive window here and right click, maybe it just wasn't added here. That's an interesting point. It looks like it's not available in the desktop code panel.
Oh, okay.
So that could be it. It is going to be available everywhere else, though.
Okay, so don't use it there. Go to the web projects control panel, correct?
Oh, maybe it's not here either. I will log a bug.
Huh.
There's another question. I'm grabbing a screenshot real quick. So
excellent. All right. Yeah. So the next question, he said, probably too much time for the time left. Hey, we don't know. Maybe we can. But converting Xbasic scripts that have been embedded into the UX into Xbasic classes and functions, and then referencing them in the UX. Can we do a high-level overview, maybe in the last 10 minutes that are left?
Sure, sure,
So
absolutely.
yeah.
All right, Dion, you spoke first. I'm going to make you presenter then.
Oh yeah, no. I mean,
Yep,
Sarah's doing an
your turn.
amazing job, so I don't want to step on her parade. So
So
would
you've
you like
got
to?
a bunch of Xbasic functions you've defined here, and you want to put them inside of an Xbasic function library.
Correct, right. So instead of storing them like inline in the UX, you want to put them in a library or something like that, so that you
Yeah.
can use them in other UXs.
So
Well, you
yep.
would start by copying all the code out of here.
So
And then
let's take an example. Let's say I have a script here. Let's say,
does Dion think he's sharing a screen?
He isn't, but
oh,
he
I'm
could be.
not.
He could be. Hang on.
No, yeah, I
Could be.
think I am, but I'm
Make you
not.
the present.
No. All
Swap it
yours,
back
all yours.
over.
Oh,
Sarah,
no, forget it. Nah, it's too
No,
late now,
Sarah.
Dion. I've
Decide.
made you the presenter. Click
I'm not showing my
OK.
screen.
Executive
Take
I
the
decision.
am not showing
reins.
my screen. My screen is not being shown. Go ahead, Sarah. I apologize.
Sorry.
It's okay.
I'm so used to doing it. I just kind of.
Sorry,
Oh,
you're back
right.
on. Okay.
Well, depending on what you wanna create, if it's just functions, you can just create an Xbasic function library. And this is done. You go to the Web Projects control panel, you click on Xbasic, and you click on New, and this will give you this filtered new Xbasic file type. The first one is that function library, and then you would come in here and you would just paste in your Xbasic functions here and save it, and then back in your UX component, you would go down and you would link that function library here. There is an Xbasic linked files property. And here is where you would specify the Xbasic function library files that you want to load. And we do have a file picker. I didn't save anything, so I don't have anything in this list, but that's
I see. Okay. And
Yeah.
then when you use those functions in your project, do you have to preface them with anything, or is it or do they act as if you would save them right in the UX itself?
Let's test it.
All right.
Right, did we call it my function? We called it my function.
Called it my function, yep.
And then we'll go properties, and I'll come down to that Xbasic linked files, and we will select that file.
Here it is.
Okay. And I put that function call inside the server side. I don't want it on execute, I want it on initialize.
Okay.
And inside that function.
So if you've done this right, when it runs, it should just open the debugger because that's the thing that the function is told to do.
Right, the function opens the debugger here on line 11. So
okay.
In theory.
Let's see.
I'm not going to use live preview though because it doesn't love me. It doesn't love me because I turned on SSL on my server and the browser is blocking it because I don't have a secure certificate.
Gotcha. But I see right here in working preview that the
debugger
appeared, so it ran the function.
That's all you have to do.
Great.
Yeah, so that's all you have to do. The other file types are a little bit different. The oh dear. The other ones that you saw there when that new dialog was open, the module lets you only expose what you want to expose. You could have a lot more stuff in there that is hidden from anybody who might call into that module. And the class lets you define an Xbasic class.
Yeah, don't do one or two, do classes. Skip those first two. Yeah, those are older school, and the reality is and I appreciate you've done a great job, Sarah, is that everything should be now in classes. And the main reason why is that if you take the work to put it into a class now, then you can easily start publishing those classes as APIs using the built-in functionality. So you essentially
services, right?
Yeah, you future-proof yourself. And it's more of a modern structural thing. The older ones, like Xbasic, definitely the first one's too limited. Second one's not bad. It's sort of like the node module, But definitely, I would say just skip it, go right to classes, start building all your classes, put your code there, get used to that. Then you're going to be in much better shape down the road.
Cool. Now with classes, quick question, do you link them just the same as you would an Xbasic function library?
No, you just reference them.
You just reference them. Okay, great.
Yeah, there's a really cool thing, you know, you can reference them. There, other things about the classes is you can do what are called static functions, where with classes, you usually have to dimension a instance of the class and then call one of the functions. Well, with what are called static methods, you don't have to do that. You can just call the method, which is really neat. The other aspect about classes, and this is very important, is that classes are persistent, meaning let's say I write a class and it has a whole bunch of functions and I load it up on my server and then I start exercising and using it. And then a week from now I go, oh, you know what, I've got a new function. So I'll write that in the class and I'll upload it to the server and then I'll start trying to run it and all of a sudden it won't work. And the reason why is when a class is loaded, they put it in memory and therefore then it's really fast to respond, etc. So therefore what will happen is that new function will be in the text file that's up on the server, but that text file which has the function hasn't been loaded into memory. So you could recycle the server that will refresh and reload the classes, or you can use, there's a command called load class, which will force Alpha to go read the file and bring those classes in. So just a word to the wise is that when you start using classes, if you're not using load class, you'll get weirdness because what will happen is it'll load it in memory for speed purposes and your changes won't be seen. So you'll go, well, why isn't it working? That's crazy. And I've spent hours figuring that out. So I wanted to share that with everybody. But classes,
thank you very much. Yeah.
Only way to go.
Very cool. Thanks. I don't see a lot of other questions here, so maybe we can break now. If not, I'll give you a minute, but you can send your questions to guides, GUIDES, at alphasoftware.com. It looks like that's it. Sarah, thanks very much for presenting. Dion, thank you very much for your help. Thanks for everyone who wrote in. We look forward to seeing you at next Wednesday's webinar. Take care. Have a great day. Bye-bye.